Hello everyone, it's James Alexander Allen. This is my first official commentary video, I guess. I'd just like to give my 2 cents on Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. You know, what I liked, what I didn't like, and where I'd like to see the franchise go in Episode 8, now that we know roughly where that's going. Before I start, spoiler alert. Seriously, if you haven't seen the film, go see it, then come back and watch this, because I'm going to be talking spoilers. Um, so to just start where I am on the franchise, I love Star Wars unconditionally. I'm one of these people. I don't even mind the prequels. I still have fond memories of them. I think my favourite film of all, though, is probably the original Episode 4. I think that's the one that kind of nailed the grown-up fairy tale aspect of it and got me hooked as a kid. So when I heard that Disney, the kind of masters of fairy tales, were doing Star Wars films of their own, I was intrigued, but also a little bit anxious because I thought it's very, very different from George Lucas's sort of very experimental, against the grain type of filmmaking. So I was intrigued to see how Episode 7 would turn out. The common theme of reactions that I'm seeing at the moment is that it was a fun, enjoyable film, but too similar to A New Hope. And I mean, I would agree that it was a fun film. I enjoyed it very much. And I did kind of like I liked it. I would agree that it was very similar to Episode 4, but I think the areas that it copied, I'd argue it actually improved on a bit. I think objectively, I would admit that it was probably a better made film than the original. And that's saying someone who loves the original for how sort of kooky and low budget it was. But I don't think we as fans can really complain too much about that, because The Force Awakens is the film the fans have been demanding for years. I remember when the prequels finished and everyone was disappointed with them and saying, no, we don't want green screen, we want practical effects. We don't want sort of long expositionary speeches, we want witty banter and sort of funny dialogue between two characters with chemistry and that kind of thing. We don't want a load of sort of different characters and all with sort of like these all different modes, all that kind of thing. We want a strong hero. We want a hero with a classic hero journey, who sort of learns the ways of the Force, saves the day. We want less flashy sword fights, more raw emotion, less political backdrop and complicated motives and that kind of thing. We just want a simple little good versus evil story again. What do you get when you put all that back together? Basically a remake of Episode 4. And we got that, you know. Can't really complain, especially as they did a pretty good job of it, I'd argue. But I'd also say there were some quite nice little twists. For instance, I was sure that Luke would be back in this film as like the old sensei teaching the ways of the Force and passing the torch to the next generation. But instead we got Han Solo as more of a guide than a mentor, really. I mean, he wasn't sort of like this sort of wise old guy. He was Han doing what Han does and just sort of helping the heroes out on their way. And that was a nice little twist on it. It worked great. Han Solo's good as ever, just as grumpy and charismatic and charming. Harrison Ford slipped back into it really well. I think they reduced Luke's role down that much just to give the new cast a fair introduction, which I think is probably wise. I mean, Rey seemed to get a hell of a lot more fleshing out in her first film than Luke or Anakin got in theirs, and I like Rey's character. I like the way she's tough as nails but a bit naive. Like the thing that she keeps wanting to go back to Jakku to be with her family, and Lupita Nyong'o's like, you do know that they're not coming back, right? You're not going to get anywhere with that. And she just looks like this 10-year-old who's lost her mum in the supermarket. You just want to give her a big hug. It's like, oh. But no, she's a good character, although, I gotta say, is there anything she can't do? I mean, she flies the Falcon, and she can do anything with technology. She can naturally use the Force and lightsabers without any training. I don't know what more Jedi training is going to do for this woman. She's pretty set already, really. But I think my favourite new character is Kylo Ren. I mean, God, what a great villain. I thought he was going to be Vader Mark II. Wasn't sure about the look, but God, the fact that he's this murdering psychopath, but also a tantruming child, it could so easily have gone wrong. But Adam Driver just knocked it out of the park, I thought. And it's interesting we got this dynamic that he was a good man from the start, unlike Vader when we only found that later after we got to know him and loved to hate the guy. The one character I wasn't mad on in this was Snoke. I mean, I was intrigued when I heard that Andy Serkis was playing him in the motion capture. I thought, what's he going to look like? But he was basically Palpatine redone. And you can't outdo Palpatine, really. You've got to try something else. I really hope they pull the rug out from under us in Episode 8, because I don't think Snoke was really necessary this time round. You could have had Kylo Ren just be a good Jedi who kind of lost his way and chose the quick and easy path, fell to the dark side through his own mistakes. And you got Donald Gleason's character sort of recruited him and started using him for the First Order's own ends. That would have worked just as well, the dynamic was there. But the one kind of plot beat which everyone says is a retread of the originals, which I would have to disagree on, is, spoiler, the death of Han. A lot of people are saying this was Han's Obi-Wan moment when he sacrificed his life to pass the torch. I don't get that at all. This wasn't a mentor sacrificing himself for his pupil. This, for me, it was a son murdering his father to sever the last ties to his childhood, while his dad was just trying to reach out to him. I think it must be one of the most gut-wrenching moments in any of the films. And I mean, I cannot see Kylo turning good again after that. I think there's point of no return. He killed the light within him with his father, I thought, with that. I'd be annoyed if he turned good now, because it was just such a point of no return to me. Similarly, the fighter battle at the end. Now, I reckon that's probably the weakest part of the film. There wasn't really the same stakes or emotional triumph of the Death Star blowing up. But that could have been the intention. Because, I mean, the real climax was Rey opening up to the Force. That was what the film was building up to. And the bit at the end, it's like, at the end of A New Hope, although he saved the day and everything, Luke was very okay with the fact that he had just lost his family, his best friend, and his mentor in a very short space of time. But here, when Rey gets off the Falcon at the end of that battle, there was no sense of triumph. The overriding feeling was, we just lost Han. He's gone, he's not coming back. It was a very hollow victory. It was more like the Dam Busters than Star Wars, really. And I honestly could have done without the triumph of destroying Starkiller, if I'm honest. Because you could have had it that moved the death of the Republic to the end of the film. So they go to stop Starkiller from firing, and they damage it, but they don't manage to stop it in time, and it blows up all the Republic planets. So they come home, they've lost Han, they've lost all their allies, all their backing, all their funding, and it's all hopeless. But then Rey's opened herself up to the Force, and then Luke's come back. And so just at the last moment, you get this big surge of hope to end the film on. But, I mean, they kind of did that just fine. I mean, that ending... Christ, they got me hooked for 8. They really got me hooked for 8. I was pumped when that film ended. Like, no, what now? So I'd like to spend the last few minutes just on what I would like to happen in Episode 8, just to sort of where I'd like the story to go. The first thing is Jedi training. I'd like to see a really good look at the work and discipline that goes into the ways of the Force. I'd love to see a saber training scene where Luke gets out his lightsaber and is like, okay, show him what you got. And Rey just charges him with a load of kind of fast, big, wide moves, and Luke just goes, boom! Blade straight at her chest. And he says, you have to learn to do it right before you can do it quickly. Because, I mean, I kind of had a problem with Rey being able to beat Kylo Ren just like that. I mean, I know Kylo was wounded and shot by Chewie and everything, but he was trained and she wasn't to some degree. And I'd like to think that the speed and the power of the lightsaber and the knowledge of the Force, it should come with time and patience, that you have to sort of go through the motions and put in the hard work. You can use the Force to become powerful quickly, but that's the dark side route. The light side, no, there should be long kind of montages of her learning the ways of the Force and sort of learning the right lightsaber swings and that kind of thing. Also, I'd like Luke to fight Kylo Ren alongside Rey, because we're obviously going to get this Empire situation where Rey probably has to choose between continuing their training and saving her friends, and Luke is like, well, I know I've been where you've been, I can't change your mind, but I'm coming with you because you don't want to do this alone. And so the two of them take on Kylo together, who by this point has become enough of a baddie that he's a match for both of them. Finally, and I don't know how alone I am on this one, I want Kylo Ren to start lusting after Rey, because she hurt him and she resisted him, and he's not used to that. And so if he's left with this sort of confused obsession over her. Yeah, he said in this film, he said, "You need a teacher, join me." And we've seen the bad guy say join me so much in these films. Imagine if his desire for her to join him was sort of romantic, twisted romantic motivation. Maybe he wants her as his dark side queen or something. He could kill Snoke and become the big monster of the galaxy and make out he'd done it for her or something. Just a nice little subversion of expectations. And then imagine if they duel again. They come into like a blade lock and he forces a kiss on her. And that gets her angry and drives her a bit into the dark side. And of course, because the dark side's weaker than the light, she's not as strong on the dark side, and he lands a blow on her. Could even take off a hand if you want to be referential. Or then maybe she could turn him down, or she could find out that they're related and tell him that, and that kind of sends him nuts, and he goes to kill her, and Luke jumps in the way and sacrifices himself for the future of the Jedi. Cloak falls empty, Luke's now a ghost. And then that could either horrify Rey into rejecting the dark side, or the despair that Luke Skywalker is dead and it's kind of her fault could drive her further down the dark path. And episode 9 could be Rey's sort of inner struggle between dark and light. But yeah, that's just my thoughts, and that's basically where I stand on episode 7 and where that leaves us. I really enjoyed the film. So grateful to the guys I went to see it with. Seriously, you guys were awesome. If you have your own opinions or ideas about this new trilogy so far, I'd love to hear them, because it's an interesting time for Star Wars right now, and there's cool stuff to talk about. But yeah, I'm going to sign off now. Thank you for watching, and remember, the Force will be with you always.